Why was Kiely Rodni's Honda CR-V in neutral? CHP report doesn't really explain that. They only mention it once in the report. How is it possible that Kiely Rodni drove into the Prosser, into the water, if the car was in neutral? CHP Multidisciplinary Accident Investigation Team Narrative Diagram MAIT report California Highway Patrol. The throttle was controlled by an electronic throttle control system. The throttle plate was found in the closed idle position. The throttle plate was actuated and the accelerator pedal was manipulated, with no sticking or binding. The transmission selector was found in neutral N position. Water was found in the engine intake manifold. No pre-crash deficiencies were noted. And here are some photos of the pedals. And as you can see, some things have been already removed. So there are some bolts and screws on the car floor, on the mat. And as you can see, it seems relatively normal. There was no bindings or something heavy on the pedal. But why was the car in neutral? And why the report doesn't have any explanation for that? Did the divers put it in neutral? Or while recovering the car, did Stephanie Furkberg put it in neutral so it would be easier to maneuver? I'm doubtful she would be able to reach to the transmission. I also included a clip about coasting. Apparently, some people shift into neutral when they are driving because it saves some gas when you are going downhill. Now, would Kiely do this while supposedly driving drunk middle of the night? I'm doubtful. I didn't even know this is a thing, but let's watch a clip. Also, there is some information what happens when water gets into the transmission. And we know the car was submerged in the water. So, of course, there are signs of water in the car.
So the first one we're going to talk about is that you should never put your vehicle in neutral when you're coasting down a hill. And so the logic behind this may be that, you can save fuel economy by putting it in neutral and coasting down the hill. And let's say you're on a tall hill and you're about to go over a shorter hill. If you put it in neutral, you can gain a lot of speed and gain enough speed to go over that smaller hill without, getting on the gas. And so you can save some fuel by doing that. But the other thing is when you do have it in gear and you're coasting down a hill, modern transmissions and modern vehicles, what they'll do is they'll cut fuel to the engine. So you'll just use the wheels, which are connected to the transmission and thus the engine because it's in gear, to shut off the fuel injectors. And so the wheels will be powering the engine. And so in that case, you won't be using any fuel. So as you're going down that hill, you won't be using any fuel. And you can see this on fuel economy indicators. If you put it on neutral, it'll read something a little bit lower. And then if you put it in drive, then you can notice that the instantaneous fuel economy will go up to the highest number that it can read because it's shut off fuel from going into the engine. Now, the other reason why you don't want to do this, and there's really three reasons, is that it kind of takes a bit of your control out of the vehicle. So when you're in neutral, you only have the ability to slow your vehicle down. You no longer have the ability to speed up because you're not in gear. So you're taking out part of your control from it. And the third reason, if those aren't good enough for you to not put it in neutral when you're coasting downhill, it's often illegal in states. So I started looking up the law in a bunch of different states. Not every state, but I found 15 states, and I will include links to all of these states' laws in the video description. But there's a huge list of states, Arizona, California, Colorado, Delaware, Georgia, Illinois, Michigan, and so on. 15 states, which I found citable sources. You can go onto these government websites and see the law where it says do not put it in neutral because you're taking.
Number 4, don't coast in neutral. Some people believe that coasting in neutral saves them gas. I mean, it makes sense. You're going downhill, so why not put it in neutral and let gravity take over? Well, the problem is that cars with automatic engines are designed in such a way that they save fuel even if the gear is in drive. They simply cut the fuel supply when you're going downhill. Secondly, letting your car coast in neutral leaves you with less control over it. You see, when you're going downhill in neutral, all you can do is slow down. You won't be able to speed up if the need arises. Besides, your car's engine runs at its lowest RPM and the oil pump works at the slowest when you're moving in neutral. For that reason, the engine doesn't cool down as well as it should and may fail due to friction and heat. Do not let water get in the transmission. If water gets into the transmission, you're in big trouble. Even the smallest amount of water, just an ounce, can wreak havoc on your car's transmission to the point that it needs to be replaced. If you're lucky and notice the problem right away, you'll save a lot of money because the damage won't be so dramatic. The thing is that when water infiltrates a transmission, it gets absorbed by the friction lining of the clutches. This causes the glue that connects the material and the clutch plates to dissolve. Some amount of water comes out of the suspension, forming white gummy masses in different parts of the unit. That's why you can't just flush the unit to get rid of the water. On top of that, the water will cause rust to form on the metal parts of the transmission. The consequences depend on how fast you recognize the problem.
We know Kiely was a very environmentally conscious person, just like her family. But would she have done this middle of the night? I'm very doubtful. And the theory is that she was going downhill. But somehow I'm doubtful she would have done this. Yet couldn't see she's going the wrong way and there's pressure. And CHP report doesn't really explain what happened. It's all based on assumptions. Some YouTuber could have done this report already 2 years ago. Why it took over 2 years for CHP to conclude this report? Could it be that they weren't sure this is an accident, but then Nevada County Sheriff's Office couldn't investigate the crime part and they just claimed, yeah, there's no foul play. So CHP had to conclude that, okay, this was a driver mistake. Because the car was in the water. We know that. The car had to go to the water. But the main reason still remains a mystery. Did Kiely drive the car or someone else? Or was the car pushed into the water? And now we have car in neutral. Just like many speculated. 2022, when they saw police recover the car. It would be great if some car person would go through these photos and the report, because they would know more what is normal, what is not. I don't know why CHP didn't take photos before stripping the car. Because now there's already bolts and screws on the floor and the furnishing is off and they have taken off data recorder and stuff like that. It would be nice to see the car before stripping the car. Or maybe they just didn't release them because some parts were redacted. Here is something about the steering system. The steering system of the Honda consisted of a 14.5-inch diameter steering wheel. The steering wheel rotated 3 turns from lock to lock with no sticking or binding. So again, they are mentioning probably the mandatory part that that was in the that was mentioned in the pedals part. There was no sticking or binding. According to this report, no one had manipulated the car, put something to the pedal, or had some binding to the steering wheel. So it couldn't have been manipulated, and it was Kiely Rodni who drove into the water, according to this report. And here are some photos of the dashboard. As you can see, some photos have the lights on and some photos have the lights off. So I assume they have put the car on just to see what lights are on. And can you see from the photo, does it look like the car headlights are off? So what happened to Kiely Rodni? Why was Kiely Rodni's Honda CRV in neutral? Why CHP report didn't explain why the car was in neutral? Was the car pushed into the water?